In the last episode in this series, we explored the legend of the most renowned and ubiquitous deity in the great civilizations of pre-Columbian America, the plumed or feathered serpent, from whom the very name America is derived. We also discussed the correlation between the worship of the serpent or dragon and heliolatry, the worship of the sun. As noted previously, the arcane devices of the sun and the serpent represent essentially the same concepts: enlightenment, knowledge, and apotheosis, and are both indicative of the same person, Lucifer. It can also be said that, esoterically speaking, the sun itself is enlightenment, and the serpent its keeper and giver. The plumed serpent deities of the Maya, Aztec, and Inca, known as Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, and Amaru, were often portrayed in human form and in stark contrast with their native subjects, having the appearance of tall, white-skinned men with golden beards and hair, and blue or green eyes. These mysterious god-men were said to have come from over the sea, bearing with them secret knowledge from the land of the gods, a highly advanced pagan civilization that worshipped the sun until it was destroyed in a great flood. Each of the civilizations that the plumed serpents allegedly founded in the Americas, namely the Maya, Aztec, and Inca, were indeed in possession of peculiar knowledge they could not have attained on their own, such as incredibly accurate cosmological models and projections, impossible for human beings of the time to ascertain. And each of these civilizations was based on a complex and bloody system of paganism, revolving around the worship of the sun. Could it be that Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, and Amaru were survivors of an antediluvian race whose land was destroyed in the great flood of Noah? Could it be that these mysterious plumed serpent deities were in fact exiles from the lost city of Atlantis? This notion might at first glance appear to be biblically unsound, since in the 7th chapter of Genesis, God himself declares to Noah, "I will destroy from the face of the earth all living things that I have made." However, if we analyze these words carefully, we can infer from them the scope of annihilation designated in the Great Flood. First, we can determine that the flood was localized to the face of the earth. Second, we can determine that the purpose of the flood was to destroy all living things that God had made. But what about entities that might not have even been on the earth at the time of the flood? Living things that God had not made. Is such a thing even conceivable? In order to determine the plausibility of this scenario, two questions must follow. 1. Was there technology in existence before the flood that could have enabled anyone or anything to escape? 2. Were there living things in existence before the flood that God had not made? I believe the answer to these questions are biblically self-evident in the 6th chapter of Genesis, wherein a race of hybrid giants was created through illicit sexual intercourse between angels and human females. In the apocryphal Book of Giants, discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, we learn that these fallen angels, or watchers as they are called, not only procreated with women to produce hybrid giants, but also with hundreds of other animal species to produce a diverse host of hybrid monsters. These angel-human and angel-animal hybrids would have inherited some of the superhuman capabilities of their angelic fathers, such as superior strength and intellect, as well as extrasensory faculties. In addition to genetically inherited capabilities, the preeminent offspring of the angels, namely the giants, were taught forbidden secrets by their fathers, secrets concerning sorcery, astrology, astronomy, pharmacy, cosmetology, metallurgy, meteorology, and geology. At first, these sciences might have been employed to produce primitive implements for industry and war. But considering that the fallen angels descended to the earth in the days of Jared, according to the book of Enoch, and that from Jared to the flood of Noah more than 1,000 years transpired, as reckoned in the Septuagint, plenty of time was afforded the antediluvian hybrids to develop advanced technologies, even far surpassing those of our 21st century. Keep in mind that before the Industrial Revolution, the world was still primitive, technologically speaking. Within 100 years, mankind went from riding in horse-drawn carriages on the cobblestone streets of antiquated cities to traversing the surface of the moon in dune buggies and building space stations in orbit around the Earth. It is essential to understand that the hybrid offspring of fallen angels were unsanctioned and illegitimate life forms. In other words, they were living things not made by God. It is my hypothesis that the hybrids of the pre-flood world, under direct tutelage of their angelic fathers, had indeed developed a level of technology that could have enabled some of them to escape the great flood of Noah. Perhaps the best evidence of this stupendous claim is to be found in the timeless legend of Atlantis. The legend of Atlantis was not invented by Walt Disney. The story of the rise and fall of both the city of Atlantis and the great Atlantean Empire has been passed down in one form or another through the oral traditions of many diverse cultures all over the globe. Though the names and details may differ from one people group to another, the common thread of a technologically advanced antediluvian civilization that was destroyed in a great flood can be traced through nearly all of them. The most famous and detailed account of the fabled Atlantis comes down to us from the 4th century BC in the form of Plato's unfinished work, Critias. In the Critias, Plato recounts a dialogue between Solon of Athens and an old Egyptian priest of the goddess Neith, Athena to the Greeks, in the district of Sais. The tale, which was of great length, began as follows. I have before remarked in speaking of the allotments of the gods, that they distributed the whole earth into portions differing in extent, and made themselves temples and sacrifices. And Poseidon, receiving for his lot the island of Atlantis, begat children by a mortal woman. He also begat and brought up 5 pairs of male children, dividing the island of Atlantis into 10 portions. He gave to the firstborn of the eldest pair his mother's dwelling and the surrounding allotment, which was the largest and best, and made him king over the rest. The others he made princes, and gave them rule over many men and a large territory. And he named them all. The eldest, who was king, he named Atlas, and from him the whole island and the ocean received the name of Atlantic. According to Plato's account, Atlantis was ruled by 10 kings, whose father was a god, but whose mother was human. What Plato does not reveal is that these 10 hybrid kings of Atlantis were giants. The Egyptians were not the only civilization to keep a written record of Atlantis. The mystery schools of the Far East have long concealed a secret knowledge of the once great empire that existed in the old world before the flood. In her voluminous work, The Secret Doctrine, Theosophist Helena Blavatsky translates the following stanza from an ancient Tibetan manuscript called the Book of Dizion. They, the Atlanteans, built great images 9 yatis high or 27 feet, the size of their bodies. What we have in the story of Atlantis is at the very least an allegory of the antediluvian world order, the old world order, in which the fallen angels distributed the whole earth into portions among themselves, and became each the god of his own realm, appointing his giant hybrid sons as divine kings. The allegorical nature of the story of Atlantis can be further discerned in the following remarks by late Masonic philosopher Manly P. Hall. The Critias first describes the blessed state of the Atlantean people under the benevolent rulership of 10 kings who were bound together in a league. These kings were monarchs over 7 islands. 10 kings bound together in a league is the subject of biblical prophecy concerning a final world empire that will arise before the end of the age. 7 and 10 are both numbers signifying the domain and authority of the dragon and his beast in the book of Revelation. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great, fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads. I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. Geographically speaking, the earth is divided into 7 divisions of land, or continents. The 7 islands of the Atlantean Empire serve as a symbolic representation of the 7 continents of the earth, and therefore of world dominion. Atlantis epitomizes the old world order, in which the gods mingled themselves with the seed of men, and generated hybrid offspring to rule the earth. What is most intriguing is that the coming new world order, like Atlantis, may in fact also be ruled by 10 hybrid kings. This Atlantean scheme seems to be predicted in the 2nd chapter of Daniel, in which King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream of a great statue, the head of which was made of gold, the chest and arms of silver, the midsection of bronze, the legs of iron, and the feet of iron mixed with clay. The statue's compartmentalized sections, cast in distinctive metals, signify 5 world empires that would arise before the end of the age. The last of these empires, depicted in the feet of the statue, has 10 toes, which, like the 10 horns of the dragon and the beast, represent 10 kings that will rule the earth at the end of the age. But these are not 10 ordinary human kings. The feet and the toes of the statue are made of iron mixed with potter's clay. Potter's clay is often used as a metaphor for the human race, since, in contrast with heavenly beings, man was formed in the hands of God from the substance of the earth, just as a potter forms his clay. But now, O Lord, you are our Father, we are the clay, and you are potter, and all we are the work of your hand. The analogy of iron mixed with potter's clay in the feet and toes of Nebuchadnezzar's statue is twofold. First, it represents a fractured kingdom. And whereas you saw the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. But the iron mixed with clay analogy does not stop there. It continues. And whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. The second meaning of iron mixed with clay, in the context of Nebuchadnezzar's prophetic dream, is that the 10 kings of the final world empire, as prefigured in the 10 kings of Atlantis, will be hybrids of some kind. And the same can almost certainly be said of the citizens of their kingdom, since not just the toes, but all of the feet are comprised of iron mixed with potter's clay. Perhaps the mark of the beast, which will be compulsory for the citizens of his empire, will have more to do with genetics than microchips, more to do with bearing the genetic markers of his image within one's genome than merely bearing an external mark on the right hand or forehead. It is my opinion that Atlantis is an emblematic depiction of the antediluvian Old World Order, and a prophetic harbinger of the coming New World Order, which will reinstitute the Golden Age, when the gods mingled themselves with the seed of men, and hybrids walked the earth. But it is also my opinion that apart from being symbolic, Atlantis was also an actual city and empire, as further detailed in Plato's Critias. According to ancient lore, Atlantis was but one of many contemporary civilizations existent in the antediluvian world, all of which ultimately annihilated one another with advanced weapons of war, in what can only be described as the ancient equivalency of the doctrine of mutual assured destruction during the Cold War. In truth, the civilizations of hybrids that existed at the end of the pre-flood age, the days of Noah, were far more technologically advanced than we could ever imagine. In fact, to some degree, what we have fancied as visions of the future in our movies and television shows, such as Star Wars and Star Trek, could perhaps be more accurately considered visions of the distant past. The theme of advanced technology in the antediluvian world is a vast and voluminous subject with many proofs, which I will not even begin to explore in this analysis. But there is one form of ancient technology that we need to consider within the context of our current narrative: Vimanas. In short, the word Vimana refers to the flying machines of ancient India, but it is also used as a general designation for all flying craft of the antediluvian world. There are many accounts of ancient flying machines throughout history, but none as detailed as the records preserved in the Sanskrit writings of ancient India describing Vimanas. In an article entitled Flight Path, which appeared in the Times of India on the 8th of April 1999, journalist Mukul Sharma wrote the following: according to some interpretations of surviving texts, India's future, it seems, happened way back in its past. Take the case of the Yantra Sarvasva, said to have been written by the sage Maharshi Bhardwaj. This consists of as many as 40 sections, of which one, the Vaimanika Prakarana, dealing with aeronautics, has 8 chapters, 100 topics, and 500 sutras. In it, Bhardwaj describes Vimana, or aerial craft, as being of 3 classes. 1, those that travel from place to place. 2, those that travel from one country to another. And 3, those that travel between planets. Of special concern among these were the military planes whose functions were delineated in some very considerable detail, and which read today like something clean out of science fiction. For instance, they had to be impregnable, unbreakable, non-combustible, and indestructible, capable of coming to a dead stop in the twinkling of an eye, invisible to enemies, capable of listening to the conversations and sounds in hostile planes, technically proficient to see and record things, persons, incidents, and situations going on inside enemy planes. Know at every stage the direction of movement of other aircraft in the vicinity. Capable of rendering the enemy crew into a state of suspended animation, intellectual torpor, or complete loss of consciousness. Capable of destruction, manned by pilots and co-travelers who could adapt in accordance with the climate in which they moved. Temperature regulated inside. Constructed of very light and heat-absorbing metals. Provided with mechanisms that could enlarge or reduce images and enhance or diminish sounds. The ancient Indian records of Vimana flying craft were not just wild concoctions of the imagination, like the folklore of American tall tales, but dealt with advanced scientific concepts such as electromagnetism, gravity, and mercury vortex propulsion. Author David Hatcher Childress elucidates. The ancient Indians themselves wrote entire flight manuals on the care and control of various types of vimanas. The Samara Sutradhara is a scientific treatise dealing with every possible facet of air travel in a vimana. There are 230 stanzas dealing with construction, takeoff, cruising for thousands of miles, normal and forced landings, and even possible collisions with birds. Traditional historians and archaeologists simply ignore such writings as the imaginative ramblings of a bunch of stoned ancient writers. After all, where are these vimanas that they write about? Perhaps they are seen every day around the world and called UFOs. Indeed, the descriptions of vimanas in the Sanskrit texts of ancient India are very similar to the anomalous flying saucers and cigar-shaped craft that people have been reporting for decades. According to ancient lore, both the Rama and Atlantean empires of the antediluvian world were equipped with Vimana aircraft and employed them in a great war with nuclear bomb-type weaponry that wrought terrible destruction. Before you take the position that the notion of such advanced flying craft and weaponry existing in the ancient world is poppycock and unbiblical, consider the words of King Solomon. That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. As previously stated, it is my hypothesis that some of the hybrid creatures from the advanced civilizations that existed in the antediluvian world were in fact able to escape the flood of Noah by means of technology, such as Vimana aerial craft. My hypothesis affords the possibility that some of these hybrids may not even have been on the planet while the earth was covered in the deluge, and would not have had anything to return to after the waters subsided, thus making them exiles, so to speak. The old world order of the antediluvian age was demolished in the wrath of God. The giants were enticed to war against one another until their whole race was annihilated. After being forced to witness the total destruction of their beloved children, the fallen watchers, who had genetically corrupted all flesh on the earth, were bound with chains and cast into the darkness of Tartarus. But before God wiped the genetic slate of the earth clean, by destroying all living things that he had made, a seed bank of pure animal stock was preserved to reseed the earth after the flood, as well as a seed bank of pure human stock in Noah, his 3 sons, and their wives. And yet, somehow, hybrid giants re-emerge on the stage of the post-flood world, though of a lesser caliber than their predecessors. Perhaps a hybrid breeding program was initiated, similar to the phenomenon of alien abductions and artificial insemination occurring in our own times. I posit that after the flood, Lucifer adopted the exiled hybrid races as agents of his own designs, emissaries of deception and ministers of the Luciferian doctrine. These agents are perhaps best recognized in the Plumed Serpent godmen that taught the natives of the Americas to worship the light of Lucifer and bequeath them with forbidden knowledge from the antediluvian world, secrets from Atlantis. Indeed, the esoteric mystery schools have dubbed these agents of enlightenment with the fitting titles of sons of the dragon and serpents. Whether or not my hypothesis concerning these exiles from Atlantis is true, what is incontrovertibly true is that the occult orders and secret societies have long been laboring toward one universal plan: to build a new Atlantis and pave the way for the coming of the man of sin, who will resurrect a new world order like a phoenix from the ashes of the old world order, and usher in the return of the gods to commingle with men in the new golden age. Now the last age by Kume's Sibyl sung has come and gone, and the majestic roll of circling centuries begins anew. Justice returns old Saturn's reign, with a new breed of men sent down from heaven. Only do thou, at the boy's birth in whom the iron shall cease, the golden race arise. Befriend him, chaste Lucina, 'tis thine own Apollo reigns. He shall receive the life of gods, and see heroes with gods commingling, and himself be seen of them, and with his father's worth reign o'er a world. Assume thy greatness, for the time draws nigh, dear child of the gods, great progeny of Jove. See how it totters, the world's orbed might, earth and wide ocean, and the vault profound, all see, enraptured of the coming time. It is the United States of America, the true land of the Plumed Serpent, that has been chosen to be the new Atlantis and bring about the fulfillment of this pagan prophecy. Stay tuned for the final episode in this series. Reporting for SteveQuail.com, I'm Timothy Alberino, and that's my analysis.